Hi, everybody. Welcome to District 4 joint webinar with 360 Privacy. A few more people might kind of filter in as the webinar continues, but we are recording this webinar and we'll send you a recording right after it finishes. So the point of this kind of webinar series is to kind of highlight some of the work that our partners are doing with kind of the District 4 data, as well as other kind of data sources that they use. So kind of start off with brief introductions, talk a little bit about our respective companies, then kind of go into some use cases and some workflows showing how Chris and his company use District 4. So right off the bat, my name is Matteo Tomasini. I am the founder and CTO of District 4 Labs. I have been in the investigations in cyberspace for the last 10 plus years and have primarily been doing deep and dark web investigation, social media intelligence, internet attribution, and have been kind of building out this data set for the past 12 years or so. So the company's only been around for about a year and a half, but the data's been around for quite a bit longer. And with me, I have Chris. I'll introduce himself.
Awesome. Thanks, Matteo. I appreciate the obsessed with data. I think that's a really good introduction for you and I. My name is Chris. I'm the Managing Director of Cyber Threat Intelligence at 360 Privacy. Similar to many people on the call, I had a start as a digital targeter in the Department of Defense, embedded within the Special Operations community. Digital targeting for a three-letter agency. I spent a lot of time overseas. I have a lot of skills in foreign languages, which I don't currently use as much as I used to. But definitely a seasoned analyst and investigator. So I appreciate you bringing me on the call.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. And so just to kind of introduce our respective companies. So District 4 Labs has its kind of main offering, Darkside, which is just an obscenely large repository of compromised records and person of interest data taken from the deep and dark web over the last 10, 12 years. So everything from your hack databases to your combo lists. We have malware logs, which have become kind of the new hotness lately. We have scrapes, just a lot of data that really help investigators deal with person of interest investigations, doing cyber assessments, executive assessments, as Chris and his company deal with, et cetera. And there's really kind of three ways you can access the data. We have integrations with several link analysis platforms, including Maltego, which we have a screenshot of here. We offer the data via API. And then we also have our user interface, which should be rolling out shortly. Chris, can you tell us about 360 Privacy?
Yeah, absolutely. So digital executive protection, we're the bespoke firm that does that in our space. And what is digital executive protection? So people really understand executive protection. They understand the importance of having physical security when you're talking about guns, gates, and guards. You want to build your walls around the principal's home, the principals where they work, etc. But we're looking for more of a proactive approach. Is there something that we could have done more proactively in the digital space that would have provided better protection for the principal in the physical space? So what we're really looking at is we want to move the wall around the principal from a 25 meters to 100 meters, 300 meters away, give the physical protection teams on the ground more situational awareness of what threats are out there. So we're talking about people talking about their principal's PII on social media, breach data, obviously through District 4 Darkside, and also looking at people finder websites, because what I like to tell executive protection professionals is that your principal is one Google search away from somebody turning a digital threat into a physical threat, because that one Google search could lead to the principal's physical address, could lead to the first five of their social security number, could also lead to all of their family members. So say the principal has the protection, then I'll just pivot, just like you're a seasoned investigator, and have done more than most, Matteo. So you understand, like, if the principal's protected, I'm going to target the spouse, the partner, the children, the executive assistant, etc. So what 360 really prides ourselves on is being a customizable and collaborative digital executive protection program that lowers that surface area, the attack surface. We want to make sure that the surface area is smaller by removing these people profiles, by removing that YouTube walkthrough of your home, things of that nature. So we pride ourselves in that collaborative piece, because one size does not fit all. When you have clients from professional athletes, celebrities, ultra high net worth families, B2B entities in the Fortune 10, all of our plans are built to the principle.
Yeah, and I think those people search engines are really, or people search engine profiles rather, are really interesting. So we've noticed also kind of in our kind of day to day that that's kind of like the first place that a lot of threat actors will look for things like home addresses, dates of birth, even family member information, email addresses, etc. It's kind of that low hanging fruit. Like, and I'm sure people have been on this call and maybe Googled someone's name and you've seen these listings for, Spokio or IntelliJ or, all these different kind of companies that basically make money by putting people's personal identifying information out there, and that's the quickest way to get some basic identifiers for a person. And I'd kind of be remiss if I didn't kind of talk about, like, lately in the news anywhere, like the cyber news. There's kind of been this little controversy, right, with one company, one rep who has been kind of doing similar service, but also been kind of populating those sites as well. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or kind of how you set yourself apart from those kind of companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is an ethical piece to it. You can't just be a problem identifier and not be a problem solver, right? But the problem is if you identify a problem and then you recreate the problem yourself and then provide another solution for that, really you are just part of the supply and the demand, which is obviously unethical. 360 prides ourselves in having no relation with any of these data broker entities. What we really stand for is the privacy rights of United States citizens. We want to make sure that, hey, you have become a figure, whether that's through your wealth, through your business, through your social media presence, etc. We want to give you your privacy back. We want to help you feel more secure so that you can go on living what, your operational definition of a normal life can be.
Right. Thanks, Chris. And I kind of mentioned that you're kind of like the first layer is, all right, let's remove, those people search engine profiles, kind of get rid of that low hanging fruit, right? So that's, kind of first port of call for a lot of threat actors. Let's get rid of that. But then, kind of as you intimated, a lot of threat actors will go beyond that, right? Or, if you have a company like 360 Privacy, kind of on your side, those profiles aren't going to exist anymore, right? So kind of what's the next step for a lot of these threat actors? And, the next step would be to do things like, social media searches or deep and dark web research, right? So they're going to have a lot of the data, especially obviously on the kind of more on the deep and dark web side, that District 4 has. And kind of the idea is, the threat actors, the bad guys have access to this data. So let's kind of give the good guys a leg up. So yeah, if we can kind of talk about some of these use cases that you have for using dark web data, Darkside data, et cetera. That'd be great. So we have kind of these four here. We can kind of go through one by one. So yeah, for like person of interest investigations, I know that's kind of a big part, especially of what you do. How do you, well, A, what does that process look like? What does that work look like? And how do you leverage, different tools for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Matteo, let me just take a one step back when you talk about putting good information in the hands of the operational good guy to ensure that we can better protect our principles. I think that's vital and that's very important because, I've had businesses come to me and say, hey, this is happening to us. Can you provide a solution? And my question is always, but, what are the tactics, the techniques and procedures? Like, what is the standard operating procedure that these threat actors are using? And typically, people aren't looking at that. They just want a solution. But, as a true investigator, as a true analyst, you understand that you have to understand how the threat actor is behaving so that you can create, that tangible solution. If I can't identify how a threat actor is going to exploit my client, then all the solutions that I'm going to provide are reactive and not proactive, right? So this is all about putting proactivity back into the executive protection space. So one of those things is person of interest investigation. So say somebody, they are a good internet sleuth, if you will. They fly under the radar. You know, the thing is with dark web data, this is all end user input data. When we talk about breach data specifically, yes, people can be discussing you in these forums and, posting your information in a doxing manner. However, a lot of this dark side data, what we're talking about is leaked data. So, you use Twitter and all of a sudden your Twitter username, all of your followers, and the email that's behind that Twitter account is on the dark web, right? Well, now I can pivot, say I'm targeting someone that's been harassing a client, posting my client's PII, things of that nature. Now we can start looking at that attribution piece. I can say, oh, here's a Gmail that's connected. Let me target that Gmail. So now I can take that Gmail, move into Darkside and other dark web platforms that we utilize and say, hey, these are the passwords that we see. These are the IP addresses. These are other usernames associated, and really you can start building out that what I call a baseball card, which is going to be able to be handed to law enforcement, whether that's local, state, federal, etc., and say, hey, this is the individual that is posting the PII of my client. Obviously, you guys handle it from here, but it helps with that attribution. So yesterday, I had a Fortune 10 company reach out. That's one of our clients, and somebody had sent a text message to one of the executive assistants for the CEO of this company and said, hey, it was a threatening, it wasn't overtly threatening, but it was definitely going towards, hey, this could be a blackmail situation if we don't get a hold on it. So they said, can you please expedite that? And that's the most important thing, Matteo, as you understand in investigations. You don't have hours and days sometimes. You may only have minutes, because if it's a threat to a principal's life, you need to know who that person is, and you need to know what they look like, what they drive, everything you can that's identifying about that individual to ensure the safety of the principal. So, within 10 minutes, I'm able to fire back an email that says, hey, I use Darkside data, I use some of our other databases, and this is the person. I went to Darkside, I said, this is the phone number is connected to a Facebook account. I went onto the Facebook account, so I was one search away on Darkside to landing on the Facebook account, which has pictures of the individual, pictures of the individual's family, has pictures of their vehicle that they've posted. It had their entire history of where they went to high school, where they went to college, where they currently work, etc. So I can use that Darkside data to say, hey, I'm going to build on this in the open source and other dark web platforms, but now I can give you within 10 minutes, this person is in a geolocation of this area, and this is their comfort zone, and the principal lives here. Yes, they could be on the move, but they've lived in this specific area for 27 years, etc. So that is one way that we use the POI investigations here at 360 with Darkside data.
That's great, and yeah, you touched on a lot of interesting points. Just kind of go on a couple of them. So yeah, one is kind of the speed with which you get to kind of that answer, right? And because I, as a kind of fellow investigator, kind of doing this work for a long time, before I had this kind of data, I would still get to the answer, right? It might take me a long time, might take me a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, etc. But eventually I would probably get there, right? There are going to be some times when it's impossible, right? There's some links that are only created in breach data. So you wouldn't be able to get from A to D without passing through B and C. But sometimes I'd still be able to get there. But especially when you're talking about executive protection, where minutes, hours can matter, it's important to get there quickly. So to be able to search such a large repository of data, tens and tens of billions of records in literally seconds. We've had cases where we've literally been able to find the individual in 10 seconds. And kind of we gave it to a fellow colleague to do it manually, and it literally took them a week and a half. So it really counts a lot, when you're trying to save time, right? Because a lot of times you're dealing with multiple threats at once, and then B, yeah, just the nature of a threat. You want to address it as quickly as possible. And then kind of to your earlier point, I think one of the interesting things about breach data in particular is a lot of people don't expect that information to ever have become public, right? Especially, obviously, maybe you're, more sophisticated threat actors, right? They're creating accounts knowing that it might become exposed, so they're putting in, fake information, et cetera. But a lot of people are creating these accounts and, putting their real address, right? Because they need to get something delivered. Or they're putting their real birth date because there's an age verification check. Or they're putting in their real license plate number, right? In the case of, Park Mobile. So you're kind of getting all that information. And even times when they're putting in fake information, it's still interesting, right? Because you're seeing what the threat actor put in there. But there's certain information that a threat actor can't really put in that's fake, right? So like IP addresses. So for example, a lot of these databases will log every IP address that you ever connected from. And that's not something you can fake. Of course, you can use a VPN, but that's also kind of telling. But that information is going to be there. And if, for example, you're found in a log stealer record, and so log stealers are kind of a type of malware that a person downloads to their device, and then that malware exfiltrates all the data from their browser. So passwords, autofills, browser history, files on their screenshots, installed software, etc. Like if you find, your subject, which we have in the past, in one of those kind of breaches, like you know everything about them, probably more than their mother does, because you're seeing everything. Like they can't hide that. This is the activity that they were doing on their browser. So just kind of wanted to make those points. So yeah, how do you use it for red teaming? I know your team does a lot of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do our threat and vulnerability assessments, red team exercises for prospective clients to show them, hey, like this is a 60 to 90-minute exercise that I just looked at everything from your open web exposure to your dark web exposure. I want to make this as digestible as possible, but here are photos of the inside of your house on, a Zillow.com or Redfin.com, where if I'm a threat actor, I can just case the entire home. I know entry points, I know exit points, I know how I'm going to clear and move through the building, right? Like these are things that you don't want available. Your home is not obfuscated or blurred on Google Maps, so somebody can then understand, entry and exit points from that, even if you get that taken down from, those Redfin or real estate type sites. And so what I'm showing them is a big thing, right? Is there is this search engine visibility vertical that, we really started focusing on, 15 to 16 months ago, where I realized, like, as a threat actor, the same way we've been talking, Matteo, internally, I will target our own processes here at 360 to say, hey, like, this is something new, or this is something we can do better, or this is a subdomain where we can actually remove more information than we thought. So now we can update our mapping structures and things of that internally. But the importance is all of this data is one Google search away. So, and if you think about the syntax of Google, all I have to say is first name, last name, home address, and that's going to start scraping these people finder sites. Now, if they've had some work done, right? They had a deletion company in the past that deleted maybe, a quarter or half of, these data broker websites, then, maybe you have to add city and state in there, but that's easily found through typical threat vectors such as LinkedIn, Facebook, all of these social media platforms, etc. So really it's to show, hey, I searched this on Google. The first thing I click on, I have all this information about you. I have the first 5 of your social security number. I have your entire family. I know who to target. And then I can take all of that data, pivot to Darkside, other dark web platforms, and I can say, hey, not only that, but in the news recently, Matteo, right? You talked about the AT&T breach. AT&T, it took them 2 weeks after the initial news of the breach to say that it was their data, right? Like with Darkside and other of our platforms, we were able to send that information out to our clients the day that it occurred, right? We weren't waiting 2 weeks. Like you don't want your social security number out there, like what you said earlier. It's not about, you don't think about this information getting out there. And then what 360 does better than anybody is we're going to say, hey, this is what's there. This is what happened. This is why it happened. And this is the white glove approach to making sure that there's a tangible solution to mitigate future risk. So red teaming looks at everything from open web to dark web. We want to look at that full spectrum of your digital footprint. And we want to say, hey, these are your plain text passwords. These are credit cards that we see. Even if you don't sign up as a client, like, hey, your credit card's out there, like, please, make sure that that's not active. Your social's out there, let's freeze your credit, etc. So it's all about showing them these vulnerabilities that inherently happen just because you use technology. I always say there's this inverse relationship in like the rise of technology and the lowering of education, right? There's more and more technology and there's less and less education of how to use it properly. So just by using your phone, using any type of device that's connected to a network, you're inputting this information. That information is going to eventually come out, even if you don't mean for it to. So you can have those proactive measures like you talked about, Matteo. Using a name that's yours, using a date of birth that's not yours, using a VPN, right? Like you think about MyFitnessPal. IP address, I'll just reverse search that in other dark web breach data. And now I can typically find spouse, partner data, family data, executive assistant data, like somebody else who also used that application logged in on the same, router that you did, wasn't using a virtual private network or relay like or Apple Relay like iPhones have. And so therefore, like you are connected through that. So again, red teaming, dark web data is extremely important to show them that, even if you have a deletion company, if they're not focusing on your dark web data and monitoring that, there are a lot of threats there that you're going to react to instead of proactively protect yourself from.
And I think, yeah, proactive is kind of the key word here, right? Like there's obviously, with, 360, you can remove, the profiles, right? But when it comes to, breaches, malware logs, et cetera, that's out there. That's out there forever. So then the kind of just switches to, all right, education and awareness, letting the executive know, hey, this information is out there. Like you did all these crazy things. You know, set up an LLC to purchase a house. You never listed your, you know, home address on any, you know, catalog, whatever it is. But, you know, that's one time you made a delivery to your vacation house of, you know, a pair of pants. And now that company was breached. So now that address is out there. So, you know, otherwise an executive might think, all right, no one knows about my, you know, vacation house because I never put it on any public record, et cetera. But, you know, as we know, threat actors go beyond public records. You know, the first port of call, yeah, it's the people search engines, and they might do some property searches, et cetera. But, you know, you might be covered on that piece. But on the dark web side, you just don't know what's out there. So it's just really great to be able to tell an executive everywhere that they're compromised. And yeah, you're not going to be able to remove everything, but you can kind of make them aware of things so they can maybe be proactive about maybe adding security or changing the way, yeah, how they interact with websites in the future. So I think, yeah.
Well, just one quick thing there, Matteo. Like when you talk about speed, right? Like the AT&T breach, like if you guys push that data the day after that it came out on the news, nobody else had the data, right? Like you guys and some of our other dark web platforms pushed that out at the same time. You know, we're currently, as of yesterday, getting clients that we've already alerted 2-3 weeks ago about this data, walked them through how to freeze their credit. These are tangible solutions. These are some future risk factors. Let's mitigate those. They're getting alerts from these other monitoring dark web monitoring services that are free or they pay for. And you know, your social security has been on the dark web for 3 weeks, right? Like your full number, like plain text, like it wasn't hashed, it's right there. And with that came your date of birth, your phone number, your physical address, your full name, your email, right? Like all of these are data points that I need for identity theft. So it's like if you're taking 3 weeks to receive alerts about that, like if you want that data the next day, like you have to use what I would consider like gold standard data, right? And what I like to think about in this space, Matteo, similar to you, I don't think of it as an individual contributor. There's one gold standard. I think of it as more of like a basketball team. You have a starting five, right? You have your gold standards. And I actually spent a year doing quality checks of dark web platforms side by side by side by side. And Darkside actually is one of our primary sources for dark web data because along with two of our other sources, we have a better full spectrum look at our clients' data. And speed is so important because of the danger of that sensitive data being on the dark web, and you have no idea that it's there.
Yeah, no, exactly. I see we're kind of running a little bit long time. We'll kind of maybe we'll jump to PII identification. So there, the idea would be, all right, you know, you can learn, you know, where a subject has lived, kind of a lot of things that we've kind of touched upon in this kind of webinar. You know, their usernames, their email addresses, their passwords, because, you know, Darkside is cracking passwords, et cetera. And then maybe talk a little bit about, you know, kind of corporate exposure, like how you might use Darkside and other similar platforms, or how, you know, 360 does kind of corporate exposure identification.
Yeah, absolutely. So the professional and the personal world have intertwined, right? Like COVID occurred, people started working remotely, so now their homes have, you know, personal networks, they have corporate infrastructure, they have both of those, right? So what I really start to see is there's a mix of personal and professional domains, right? I call it this, you know, it's a cross contamination. People started using, you know, you have your IT team, you have your corporate team that's focusing on breaching their secure, you know, area, like they're protecting their egg. But the thing is, they don't understand that now you have employees going home and they're using their professional domain on Facebook, for LinkedIn, for all these social media platforms. They're inputting that information that then again is going to be leaked on the dark web. They're using that as recovery information for Google accounts, Yahoo accounts, Outlook, you know, all of these types of accounts, right? And so now all of a sudden, if you know, a threat actor can see that, okay, now I have access to this Gmail, the recovery was actually for this professional domain. Now they can just start hopping back into that professional environment. They see plain text passwords that come out. They start doing credential stuffing attacks. You know, I recently did a threat and vulnerability assessment for a CISO in a large B2B entity, and they were utilizing the same password with their personal Yahoo that they were using with their professional domain, right? So now that's a huge issue, because if that comes out on, you're not monitoring Yahoo, but you are monitoring the professional domain, you don't understand that now there's a vulnerability there. And that's how we use dark web data to better protect entities by protecting principals.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah, a lot of times the executives, right, have like kind of the keys to the kingdom. So if you compromise the executive, you compromise the company. And that's why a lot of kind of like, pen testers like to use this kind of data to try to get into networks. Because like, as you mentioned, the head of IT security, as has happened in the past, might use the same password on LinkedIn that they use for the entire network. And then, yeah, all kind of bets are off. So yeah, these next kind of few slides, kind of want to walk through kind of like an example kind of workflow. So here we're using one of our integrations with Maltego to kind of demonstrate how an investigator might leverage kind of Darkside data to learn more about an individual. And we're kind of starting off here with kind of a feature in Darkside, which is kind of called complex search. And the idea being, all right, if you're searching for a common attribute, right, like a name or even an IP address, you might get millions of results. So let's filter those down a little bit. So I don't know, Chris, if you want to kind of walk us through how you use complex search, and then we can kind of pivot through the rest of the graph.
Yeah, definitely. I think one really important thing here is to mention that, as you guys are more of like a consumer ATO, a point and shoot solution, like here's a selector, here's the results. Most providers do not have some type of Boolean ingrained like this, where I can still use an and parameter, right? Which is huge, because I always tell people you could have all the secrets of the world and all the keys to the kingdom, but if I can't get to that data, it has no value to me. I don't care if your data lake is 500 billion data points. If I can't get to it, it doesn't matter at all, right? And so as an investigator and analyst, being able to come here and do a complex search and say, hey, I'm looking for John Smith. There's a lot of John Smiths out there. And being able to use an and parameter here of a physical address or a date of birth, or any of your other endpoints that you can search, so like an email address or a phone number, an IP address, things of that nature, we can actually start parsing through and making that very ambiguous name. We can do more of a surgical search there. The other way I personally use this for red team exercises, like we talked about earlier, Matteo. I want to target the people in the ecosystem of the principal. The principal has the physical protection, the principal has the digital executive protection, but the spouse and partner are typically left out, the kids are left out, the executive assistants are left out, and 360 prides ourselves in making sure that those walls, there's depth and breadth to that. We want to push those walls out around the entire ecosystem, because here I could just say, okay, I know that John Smith lives at 123 Main Street. Well, now I'm just going to put the last name and 123 Main Street. So now I'm going to start seeing selectors or personally identifiable information come out for the spouse, the partner, the kids, including their dates of birth, their social security numbers, etc. So you're one complex search away from really having a map visually through Maltego, of course, of that entire family structure.
Yeah, that's some great points. So here, for example, so here we kind of got this one for each record, live auctioneers, has a lot of interesting PII in it, right? So we have phone numbers, we have that address, we have an email address, a password. So that's one of the other things, and I think I alluded to this earlier. A lot of these, almost all, like these days anyways, companies will hash your password, right? Because they don't want to store the password in clear text. It's obviously a security risk. But District 4 Labs is cracking those passwords to see what the real password was. So here we have a very unique password, and because we're letting you crack we're cracking the password, we're letting you also search by that password. So here we can pivot on this password and find two other breaches, right? MyFitnessPal and kind of Park Mobile, which in turn have other interesting information. I don't know, Chris, if you want to kind of discuss how you've leveraged this kind of
definitely.
data.
Yeah, so MyFitnessPal, right? Like that's geolocational data. It's a fitness app. So you're thinking like Strava and some of these others, Garmin, right? You have a leak on that. Like these could be connected to maps that map out their runs, them biking, hiking, their movement, where they are around the United States. So it's huge. With the IP address, again, you can reverse search that and see family members that were associated. You have usernames, so now you can pivot to some of the social media searches and things like that. Park Mobile, I mean, 2021, having the vehicle license plate leaked, I mean, it's not great. And a lot of times people don't realize that it also had the nomenclature of what you had that vehicle named as. So it may say Matteo's, Lamborghini, or Chris's Ferrari. And so now you start to get names of spouse, partner, kids again, and the vehicle type, the model, the make, and then all of a sudden, you have the license plate. So if you know where these people live, now as a threat actor, I can just go post up at a Starbucks or somewhere near where I think they live and just start looking for these vehicles. So there's a lot of great data that you get through breach records that you're not necessarily going to see on the open source side or not have it easily accessible.
Yeah, no, exactly. Great points. And then, yeah, so you can kind of continuously pivot. So here you're pivoting off of a username into the Twitter kind of breach. Again, obscene amount of data, and here just kind of showing it's not just, PII that you're getting from these records, right? Because if see that they had, if their email address is in a certain breach, that means that they had an account on that breach, right? So the example of MyFitnessPal earlier, their email was there under a certain username. So that means they had a MyFitnessPal under that username. Or obviously, if their username was in the Twitter breach, they had a Twitter account under that username. So you're also learning what social media profiles they have and then what their interests might be, right? If you see that they were part of, a right-wing extremist forum, right, that was breached, then you're going to have insight into their, political leanings, right? If you see that they're part of a hacker forum, you're going to have a certain understanding of what they are. So it's not just about learning, their different email addresses, their passwords, their IP addresses, et cetera. It also gives you a sense of, who they are, what their interests are, et cetera. So that's, as an aside, a reason that people can also use this data for due diligence and kind of general threat investigations. So yeah, here we're pulling out the Twitter ID, which is, something that doesn't change, right? You can change your Twitter username, but you cannot change your Twitter ID. And in Darkside, you can search by social media IDs. So we have hundreds and hundreds of millions of Twitter IDs, Google IDs, Facebook IDs, Instagram IDs, almost every ID you can think of, because people have connected their accounts to other accounts when they log in, right? Ever seen that? Do you want to log in via Google? Do you want to log in via Twitter? We're collecting that information as well. So you can search by a Twitter ID and, for example, find, the LinkedIn scrape, right? Which will lead you to additional data, Facebook account, obviously the LinkedIn account, a new email address. And, one of the other interesting things you can see here is when we're searching by email, and again, because this kind of platform was born of, to be frank, my kind of frustrations in using other platforms, we wanted to instill some intelligence into our platform. So, we know that sub email addresses exist in the world, right? You can add a plus to your email handle, put anything you want, and it'll still go to your inbox. So if you have an Outlook email, a Gmail email, a Proton Mail email, etc., you can have, and a lot of people choose to do this to kind of differentiate their different accounts and to lower the kind of vulnerabilities of their primary account, say like, M Tomasini plus LinkedIn at District 4, M Tomasini plus MyFitnessPal. That's the same person. So we build that into here. So when you search for jsmith@gmail.com, you're going to get a record that doesn't have jsmith@gmail.com, but has jsmith plus i4@gmail.com, which is technically the same email. And that's not something you would typically find in another platform.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's huge, Matteo, right? Because again, speed and efficiency of the investigation is of utmost importance, especially when, people's lives are at risk. So being able to search a phone number in one way and it searches the, various, the variations there is huge. I mean, and then you start integrating human error. Like if I had to retype that phone number in 5 different ways, 6 different ways, and as you parse data, like it comes out in all, shapes and sizes. So it's so important that I'm able to search one time and get all of those results, because that saves a lot of time and efficiency. Just to talk quickly about some of this stuff, LinkedIn, right? Several scrapes there. Obviously in 2023, there was the, alleged LinkedIn scrape with, real and fake data, et cetera. But one thing, especially this one in 2021, I mean, you're talking about these were the email addresses associated to your LinkedIn profile. So now you can start seeing their work history. You can confirm that this is the, the individual, that the Matteo I'm wanting to target, et cetera. And then they have phone numbers. They had, their whole entire, this is my synopsis of my life. Some people have their birth year on LinkedIn, and a lot of stuff is like, hey, be active on social media platforms that you want to be active on, but just think about how we can, either do things more proactively, put out false information, or how can we better protect the email address that's associated, because then now I can just pivot from that email address like you did here. And again, I for fraud, like demystifying the dark web space. Like we're talking about user input information. This came out as breach data, right? Well, I for fraud is you bought something on an e-commerce platform. They ran that for anti-fraud. They stored that information. They got breached. So it's something you input, not even knowing where your data was going. The e-commerce platforms were not good custodians of that data. And now all of a sudden, I for fraud comes out, which is this is your credit card information, your IP address, physical address. There's all types of information. When this breach came out, we had to send to our clients like, hey, this is a credit card that expires in 2025. Like, if you're still using it, please cut that, etc. So having access to this data is huge. And it's of utmost importance if you're going to have like a true benchmark program in digital executive protection.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I was part of the eye for fraud breach as well. And yeah, I had never heard of eye for fraud, but I bought like a dishwasher at some place in New York City, and they sent my information to them. So again, it's just like unintended consequences. Like, I never would have expected, like, I could have the cleanest social media profile in the world. I could never set up an account, never do anything. But still, unbeknownst to me, my information is now part of the dark web. It's in these breaches. And I've never heard of eye for fraud. So yeah, just kind of, this literally took, like, again, kind of the speed and efficiency, 20 seconds to learn almost everything about this individual. And yeah, so I know we're a little bit over time here, but I'll kind of pause now to see if there are any questions. My colleague Albie will help us with that.
Yeah, first off, I mean, thanks to everyone for joining. Thank you, Matteo and Chris, for taking us through. We do have a few questions in there as well. The first of which is, what are the most common questions about the legality of collecting compromised credentials?
Sure. So I can start off, and then Chris, if you have anything to add.
Yeah.
So District 4 Labs is a US-based company. We follow, the Department of Justice has very clear guidance on how to collect data, how to store data, who we can offer data to, et cetera. We follow all those guidelines. We are GDPR compliant. And this data is technically open source intelligence, right? We are collecting this data from the depths of the deep and dark web, and storing it, indexing it in our repository. But we're never paying for data. We're never obviously doing any of the hacking ourselves. And yeah, this data has been used in numerous breach litigation cases. It's been used in numerous court cases that have gone on, whether it's prosecuting one for criminal activity who was identified because of this data. So think of it as, I mean, there are kind of the same way, with 360, they're kind of the, with 360 competitors like OneRep, et cetera, it's kind of those shady sites. There are shady sites online. I won't name them, but there's some that are doing some of the hacking themselves, and they're then selling this data on as part of a program, or they're storing requests made by their customers, et cetera. So we're 100% above board and have paid way too much money to attorneys to make sure everything is legal.
Yeah. Now, Matteo, we're kind of on the other side of that spectrum, right? Looking at how are we looking at privacy laws in the United States for what are these data brokers like? How is it legal? We have clients ask all the time, like, how is it okay that they have the first 5 of my social? Like, and you're starting to see, there is some legislation that's being pushed about, privacy laws and things. People ask us how we feel about it. Like, we feel amazing about it, right? We want the privacy rights of US citizens to be respected. And that's what we're pushing for as well. Unfortunately, as you start looking through some of this, you see that there are loopholes that a lot of these people finder sites are going to find their way through, right? So it's on to us to really truly understand what legalities can we hold against the site. What's the privacy policy? What's the terms of use? Like, what's that white glove approach? Because it's not one size fits all in this world, especially when it comes to legalities and like, how can I get this information down? So it's all about, we're almost on the other side of the spectrum. It's like, well, how can we help better support the legalities that are in place to better protect our clients as well?
Awesome. Yeah, we've got another one in here too that's relatively relatively related, but outside of adhering to legal standards, what are some of the other main differentiators? And we've spoken about a few of them, but what are some of the main differentiators of the Darkside data to other dark web data and similar competitors?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think coming from a third party, it's always nice, right? So speed and efficiency, right? We've talked about it. If AT&T breach came out on March 21st and you're not getting an alert about that from your dark web provider until April 11th, like, that's a problem. Like, you want that data as soon as possible. So speed there is important. The longer you let information sit out there, it's stale intelligence, but it can be used to target you. It can be used to target your family. The other thing is there are a lot of platforms currently, as of today, that I have been looking through, and they still don't have the AT&T breach, right? And so it's kind of like, if you're going to be a security platform in this space and you are marketing that you are protecting the principal, you are, you know, the gold standard in X, Y, and Z. Unfortunately, a lot of platforms have just become more of a check the box. Like, we have dark web data, we have open source intelligence data, we have X, Y, Z, but at the end of the day, if there's no support to that, if I do a quality check and 3 weeks after my client's social security number is still not populating, then I have to go out and continue to do quality checks of what I would consider to be the gold standard. And as a third-party user of this platform for the last year and a half, I have done that, and that is why they are one of our primary sources of dark web data. So you guys don't have to talk about yourself because the data speaks for itself.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Chris, for that. I mean, yeah, it's that, and then, you know, one of the other things we kind of pride ourselves on is that this kind of platform was kind of built by and for investigators. So whereas other platforms might kind of collect dark web data, right, forums, message boards, et cetera, and then kind of almost accidentally, like in that process, kind of collect some data sets. Like, we're focused entirely on those data sets with person identifying information. We're not collecting the posts from forums, et cetera. Like, we're not focused on that. We're focused only on those data sets. So that means we spend a lot more time parsing out the data, indexing the data about 10 different ways so you can search it. So you have that example earlier of searching sub email addresses. Like, you cannot get that result from any other platform, period. Just because of how we've kind of built the logic into our platform. Chris mentioned searching for phone numbers. You know, as an analyst, like, you know, having to put, like, you know, writing little scripts to do like 10 different variations of a phone number with dashes and, you know, periods and, you know, parentheses, et cetera. Like, that's the way you need to search in typical dark web platforms. In Darkside, you just put in the phone number and we'll just give you the results because we know that's what you want. Same with, you know, kind of foreign names. Like, we're normalizing accent marks, diacritical marks. Like, we know that you probably don't know that that slash through the O in a Norwegian name, you know, looks like this. You might even know how to figure it out on your keyboard. We're going to normalize that. So if you search for, you know, that name, you're going to get the results with and without the slash because we know what the analyst is looking for. So I think that's kind of the key differentiator is we're not just searching for mentions of a name or of an email or whatever. We're searching for where is this email represented in our data set.
Yeah, one quick thing to add to that too, Alpi and Matteo, was that it's very important to say that this is an investigative platform built by an investigator, right? This is an analytical platform built by an analyst. It's not what you typically see, right? You typically see platforms that are built for, you know, mass market, they make sense to everybody, but when you really start trying to be a power user and do granular things on these platforms, they break, they don't work, it's just not what you're looking for, etc. And, you know, you guys are coming out with your UI. I've been doing beta tests with that, and I can tell you right now, like, it's what the industry needs, right? You need to be able, if I'm an analyst, I need to go in there and be like, hey, this is time and efficiency. I see all of the data that I need. I can download it as a CSV if I need to, or JSON, and send it to whomever and parse it differently myself. But also, if I'm leading a team of analysts, right? If we have anybody on here that leads a team of analysts, you want to get your junior analysts into a safe environment, touching data as soon as possible, but you have to make sure that they've been trained. But with a UI and the bumpers up, that's easy to use. You can start training a junior analyst from day one because it's like, hey, put the phone number in and like, let's talk about this data, right? It's built for analysts, and like that is something that you're not typically seeing in the dark web space or really in the security or protective intelligence space currently in 2024.
Perfect. And I think with that, like, just wanted to thank Chris, obviously, for joining and for the great conversation, and everyone for joining and for bearing with us as we went a little bit over time. But yeah, we will be sending a recording of this webinar to everyone here. And yeah, Chris, I don't know if you have any final thoughts, but for me, thank you for everyone.
No, that's it. Thank you guys for having me on. And you know, if you ever want to talk about Darkside data to a third-party user, reach out. And if you want to talk about 360 privacy, of course. But appreciate the friendship and partnership in the space. And thanks for having me on.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.